Today is the third day of the July-August 1986 retreat. At first, a few words about walking around after a period of sitting. I usually say something about that in the opening talk, forgot it, and it has come up. Why do we walk after a period of sitting? It has been stated in this way before. You say you've done away with all rituals, and here we have this ritual now of walking one after another, single file. I understand. What are we doing this for? One thing, I don't consider this a ritual. The way rituals emerge, and one can observe this in one's own creation of rituals that one then adheres to, they have a fear-binding function. Fear or anxiety or upset calming function. The reason we have the walking period after the sitting is that people who wish to do so can stretch their legs and walk. There's no requirement that one has to walk. If one wants to keep sitting during that period, that is okay. One doesn't want to walk through these rooms here, like to get some fresh air. There is the exit from the dining room that one can go out up into the grassy hill. One can go through the front reception area outdoors, or where the bulletin board is. In the coordinator's room, in that hall, there is an exit with a little porch. And do some stretching there or walking. Unfortunately, most of the time, during walking periods, meetings are going on, so we ask people not walk onto the deck during meeting time. But this particular walking period here, before the talk, there are no meetings, and one can walk on the deck. One can sit in the balcony, walk down to the parking lot, it doesn't matter. If there was a way in which some 30 or 40 people could walk through these two rooms in any kind of order, we've never tried it. I think it would be sort of a slightly chaotic milling around. But admittedly, particularly when people are here who've never been here before, never been to a Zen center before, looking through their eyes, one realizes it looks very weird. People just single file walking around. But one can drop this kind of evaluation too and test it out. When one walks quietly, attentively, the feeling of the soles on the ground and the floor moving underneath. It's not the floor, but this is how it looks. Different brown spots and mats, whatever there is. The whole movement of walking, attending to that, and the quietness of it, a certain rhythm and sounds of it. Then it is something different. It is not conceptual at that moment. It is something that is actually happening, and the awareness of it. Sometimes people say they find that it's much harder to be aware of just what's going on while walking. During sitting it's easier. So maybe walking is a challenge. See where there can be awareness also in walking and moving around, where many different sights appear, even if one has one's eyes down. And trying to figure out what is this and associate one's memories with that and philosophize about things. And again, this urge to look what other people are doing. All of this is open to insight, to observation. Without making a compulsion out of it. If there is compulsion, can it be seen, observed, laid bare? As it happens. Many questions have come up. The first thing we'll talk about is work. This is something we do a lot of the time. Most of our life we're working in one capacity or another, on one project or another. And here we have about an hour, or for some people more than 1 hour, of work, which is an opportunity to find out with care how one works. Normally in our daily life we're so rushed, so hectic, and there's always too much work to be done in too little time. And one goes often very routinely through what has to be done. Always thinking, or most of the time thinking of the next thing that has to be done. What I have to do when I get done with this. And then when one is on the next thing, thinking of what all remains to be done. And never, maybe never for one instant, precisely and caringly with this moment. Here in this period of quiet, just the sounds of other people working and the own sounds one makes in working, but no talking about it. Can one observe this tendency, this habit of thinking of the next, or wanting to get the thing over with, working to get it done? Or maybe working to get it done well, so a person whom one thinks, maybe a supervisor, will think well of one. Also one can be proud oneself of what one has accomplished. Working toward that end. Is that how we work? If these goals are there, getting it done or being praised for it, thought of well for it, or thinking well of oneself for what one has done, then can there be this minute and caring attention every moment? It cannot, because the energy is already divided. Part of the attention is on the expected goal. the expected reward. But awareness, this moment, means no division. No escape. Wondering what is happening right now. And if this state of wondering sets in, what am I doing? What is going on? What is the feel of the lettuce leaf under the water? Then one will look, maybe for the first time. It's amazing to look at a lettuce leaf in the hand with water running through it. Little brown and black bits swimming in the groove, in the veins. One tilts the leaf, they drip out with the water. The feel of it, all the different wrinkles and the shadows, like little hills and valleys. The color, the pale green to the dark green on the edges, the yellow spots, the whole thing. Without philosophizing about the beauty of washing a lettuce leaf. One does that, and one can see that one does that. And when one notices one is philosophizing or soliloquizing about what one is doing, can one wonder whether one can do it without that? Just the bare doing of it, with no accompaniment of any kind, which means the accompaniment has to be noticed, or else it goes on, and the attention is divided. Because with philosophizing about something or being poetic about it, there comes very quickly the image of being the philosopher or the poet, and how terrific I'm seeing this. Can one see that if that happens? Just as one sees the lettuce leaf in the water and hears the sound of the rinsing, also see an image that comes up if it comes up. It's the same attention. It's the same awareness. And if the mind has wandered off to something entirely different, and one comes to, can it just be acknowledging what happened with no further added comments, evaluation of that one was inattentive? It's superfluous, it's clear, it's a fact one was inattentive, there was no attention. It's enough. And then wonder what is going on actually now, this minute. With that, if this can take place, with that, the orneriness comes out of a lot of the work that we do. Because we're alive with looking and listening and feeling what is here, including a movement of the body, the feel of it. And the timelessness of it. We don't get anything done faster. Maybe we do, if we think of that we have to get it done quickly. Maybe if there is a deadline, we do move faster. But even if we move faster because something has to be done, maybe in the kitchen, a certain time, in a certain time, a casserole has to be together, or a soup. So let's put it the other way around, just for attending to every step of it does not delay it. Or does it slow it down somewhat? And is that slowing down make one late? Going to make one late? I doubt it. And it saves a tremendous amount of nervous energy waste. It's like a vacation. Where the air and the sound of the birds are also heard at the same time because there's openness. Not just zeroing in on this thing that I have to get done. Then the senses narrow down or close except for what is needed for this piece of work that has to be finished and gotten over with. When you don't feel this rush, then there's a chance for the eyes and ears and pores to open up without pressure or fear. There's no one here to reward or praise the work. We're doing it because it needs to be done for ourselves. And at work, where we work for money, for livelihood, can the same thing happen, at least at moments, for moments at a time. Actually feeling the pen in the hand. If one is writing something, or being in touch, not just mentally, but totally with what one is doing. Not with an eye out toward the ending of it, but ending that division in being here. You may find that the people or the circumstances, the environment in which you work, doesn't allow this leisure. Pressure comes from all sides, and everybody working in a pressurized way, one finds oneself in a stream, in a current of what we've just described, working to get things done and over with. So again, it is a challenge to ask oneself if it's possible to work from moment to moment with a quality of leisure. By this I don't mean dawdling, but looking and perceiving totally what is going on in the midst of this stream of narrowed down senses that we live in and that we participate and contribute to. Just because it doesn't work this moment or today doesn't mean it won't be possible tomorrow. But to wait for tomorrow is the same thing. I'm not doing it now because maybe tomorrow, then I'll do it, I'll postpone it. Anything that is ever going to happen can only happen now. There only is this moment. Tomorrow is an idea, and yesterday is a memory. This is closely connected with a question that is often being asked after having heard a few talks. Which we talked, as we did right now, about goals and motives, how they divide and separate from this instant. And then the question comes up, if there is no goal, and there's no method, you say, there's no method to see, people say to me. So if there's no method, no technique to learn, no way to get to this state, no goal that one should have in mind, and then you talk about no results, don't expect any results, then why am I here? What am I doing this for? Why do I put myself through this, including the pain that arises from sitting? It is good to question why one is here. To really plummet why one came here or is doing this. Not adopt somebody else's comments or ideas about why one is doing this, but to see for oneself, why did one come? And why is one here? Most of the time it is to attain something, to get someplace, to change, to become a better person or more peaceful, to get rid of one's problems, possibly all of them. To be able to relate better. To be able to be more alive, less numb. Or maybe just to find out who one is, what one is. And in going about it the way we have been trained and conditioned to go about anything we want to attain and achieve, realize it is always what we just talked about, doing this, what I'm doing right now, for the sake of something else. All right, I'll put in hours of sitting, but it is for the sake of coming to this clarity or peace of mind or solution of my problems. Which, again, is not being with this moment, which may be full of problems, resentment or aching, mentally and physically, frustration, discouragement, or getting in touch with whatever. Impatience, rushedness, obsessiveness. As we just talked about in working, can one be with this moment of whatever it is like, whatever has come up, whatever it feels like, however it feels like, and not try to get it over with in order to be free of it, but dig it. Let it be. Maybe the first time in one's life with some awareness which does not criticize or judge or reject, run away, want it to be otherwise? If these mental movements take place, can they also come to light as mental movements? Not I shouldn't feel this way, I shouldn't think that way. If that judgment happens, can it be seen, felt? Sometimes people say, I have trouble with the word seeing because I always then picture two big eyes. So, find another word. I'm not stuck to the word seeing. Detecting it, discovering it, feeling it, listening to it, experiencing it, being in touch with it, whichever way you want to call it. The crucial thing is no separation, no rejection or condemnation. An embracing awareness of what's there. Not because I want to say it's good, I want to accept it, but because it's there. And has never been looked at, never been felt, always been shunted or escaped from, dulled. And this can't be done, this can't happen, if part of the mind thinks of the result, of the possible outcome. It takes every last ounce of energy to be with what's there. Completely, wholly. Without knowing it from the past. That's another crucial point. If there's a pain in the leg or in the back, does one know it? Maybe this is being the third day one knows how bad the pain in the knee and the back was on the second day, and that it got worse instead of better. So this knowledge one now brings to the pain on the fourth day. Or one may have a history of backache. One knows how bad it is and how it will get worse. I remember this from one of the very first sessions they were called I went to. Having had a history of backache and knowing that a backache, once a situation, posture, etc. elicited, and that situation continued, that backache was not going to get better. That I knew from experience. It's going to get worse. And here we're still, I don't know how many hours left or days to the session. And it was already unbearable. And bringing this knowledge in, realizing how unbearable it would be, how it would not, I couldn't go through with it. That was the thought, the projection, which was based on past experience. And then it occurred to me that maybe what was felt here was not what I knew from the past. There was a possibility that this was something I did not know. And what was it like if I didn't know it? And that changed the whole thing around. It was a completely different approach. The letting go of past experience, of knowledge, and the anticipation of what would happen based on knowledge. And finding out what this actually was. Not in order to anything. just what was it? There was no energy left to figure out and in order. It was just the only thing. There was no choice. The only thing that was right. And indeed, it was something I had never known before. And every one of us can find this out, and maybe has found it out, that a pain that is not known and feared and resisted, fought, opposed, hated, but openly approached without knowing, it changes. Not that it necessarily goes away, but it's different. It isn't the enemy anymore. This is the ending of separation. And when there's no separation, there's change. The only time that change happens, real, deep change, only happens when there's no separation, no opposition, no expectation of results, and yet a witness that's undivided. Then what is there undergoes a change which no willpower can bring about. Willpower is always separation, isn't it? Separation and resistance. Because if there was no resistance, one wouldn't have to forge ahead with the will, which is desire to achieve, to attain states. It's a totally separating and separative movement of will, in the service of me and my desires, goals, satisfactions. Is there a technique in this? This is the question that comes up so often. How do I do this? But I think it's quite clear that this is not a method or technique, it's just the happening of it, of not knowing, and therefore an open wondering of what everything is when I don't know it from memory and past experience. A contact which has no adversity. If you say, how do I get there? I say, I don't know how one gets there. It either happens or it doesn't. Either one clings to one's past experiences, or one is experimental and wonders what this instant is if I don't know. Of course, knowledge constantly protrudes. There's a feeling of lostness or scariness if we don't have the past to base our actions on. But I think it's intellectually very obvious, very clear, that this moment is not the past moment, no matter how accurate the memory may be, and our memories are not accurate. How can a memory of a past moment be accurate if at that past moment we weren't totally aware? We were only aware of fractions of that moment, and they are recorded in the memory. So even that moment was not totally recorded for what it was. And with that insufficient memory, we approach this moment or another person. A totally inadequate, insufficient way of meeting each other or whatever comes up within oneself. If one really understands that, sees that, from questioning it and observing it, then maybe it's not so easy to put aside what the memory suggests this is, or he is, or she is, on the basis of what has been. Maybe then it's not so difficult to put it aside if one sees it as insufficient, an insufficient tool to look. There's always putting something in front of the eyes or ears. With which I come to another question which was asked. Is there a real inner need to see, to look? A yearning to find out the truth? Is there a real inner need, a yearning to see, to find out the truth? A question like this one has to ask of oneself. The fact that somebody says, yes, there is, or no, there isn't very helpful, is it? Or if somebody does say, yes, there is, what happens? Does one then start believing in that? In which case, this need and this yearning to find out the truth becomes a concept, an idea in which one has faith. And that, again, is not conducive to looking within whether there is such a thing, or whether the yearning and the need that one seems to feel at times, what that is. Where does it come from? What is its nature? Little children want to find out things. Taste everything, knock, feel, look at things, observe. They're interested in everything if they have not been thwarted too much. I have not noticed in little children wondering how they themselves function mentally. The wondering and the investigation seems to be directed toward the outside. A butterfly or leaves moving, grass moving, little ants crawling is all of enormous interest. a scene comes to mind which we observed recently in a restaurant. A family came to squeeze into a booth. I say squeeze because there were many children, all kind of different ages, but all very little. And a father and mother who appeared to be somewhat nervous over this amount of children to keep under control in the booth. And there was a little baby that had a chair its own with a little high chair with a tray in front. And while the parents were busy keeping the children quiet and picking meals and the hassle, I want this, no, you should have that. Why didn't you take this? No, I don't want that. All the time this little baby was just looking around. The waitress came by and was looking. Somebody else went by and was looking. He was taking it all in. Nobody else saw anything except what was going on, what was described. It was a tiny thing, didn't have hair yet. Almost slipped through the tray. I was still looking. And of course our whole scientific development shows that there has been interest in human beings to find out how things work. Very often in order to produce better things or wanting to fly, one tries to find out how is flying possible. Wanting to turn lead into gold, this is how chemistry started. But there's also some real pure inquiry, wanting to find out about the stars, the earth, flowers. But rarely an inward inquiry. Who am I? And yet that too has been there to a much lesser degree for ages. Is it for the sake of finding out or for the sake of salvation? I don't know. This need to be free? Is it because one cannot stand the prison one is living in and therefore dreams of freedom, or a path leading to freedom, or a savior leading one to freedom? This question about isn't there a need to find out? Is it always away from what is? Or is there a need to find out what the prison is all about? I think most of the time we want to skip that step. We want to get out, but not looking at it, not finding out how we create it. How it comes into being. We may not even start out with a premise, with the assumption that we create it. Usually we think someone else has created it for us. It's an enormous discovery for a human being to glimpse that we ourselves may create the prison we live in, the difficulties, the sorrow. If that is seen to be true, then the energy does not have to go to blaming others and trying to adjust the outside. Then one will begin to look inwardly Is there a yearning to find out how we create sorrow for ourselves and each other? And a need to find out if sorrow can end, if the creation of sorrow can end within ourselves. Because it's the only laboratory, the only true available laboratory that we have. We tend to shun that and try to improve someone else first, find out about his or her difficulties. It's so much easier to see in others what we dare not look at in ourselves, isn't it? But is this exclusive? One can only work on oneself, or is, as one is working and looking within, is there also an understanding of what happens outside in other people? We talked about this yesterday or the day before, that fundamentally what happens within us, the problems that we experience, are not unique to ourselves, they're universal. And with understanding and uncovering what happens within, one is also uncovering and understanding what happens in all other human beings. The person who asked this question about whether there is a need to understand, a need to, he didn't say understand, a need to see. He also said, doesn't there have to be effort and struggle in this? Doesn't there have to be effort and struggle before one can even come to see? You talk so much about effortlessness, but doesn't there need to be great exertion, struggle, before there can be insight? Again, is one talking from one's own experience? One has struggled, as one remembers, one has struggled all one's life. But why has one struggled? Has one struggled because one wants something, freedom, salvation, kensho, enlightenment, and trying different methods to get there? At first, maybe just reading, struggling to understand what the author is saying, not understanding it. The struggle of it, and having a practice, trying to practice to perfection, struggling with it. Different teachers, different rules, different requirements. On the one hand, struggling to control thought, control desire in order to attain the goal, and on the other side, wanting to go with desire and thought and fantasy. The struggle between doing what one wants to do and doing what one thinks one should not be doing. Maybe one has to go through all this, I don't know. Whether it is justified because one has gone through it, which probably all of us have, therefore to postulate, therefore it has to be done. It's inevitable or a necessary requirement. I think this is going too far, just because something has happened. One cannot say it therefore has to happen to everybody else. As long as there's the struggle to attain a goal, there is not the openness of perception, the openness of listening to what's there. I think that is clear. Struggle, as we said all along during this talk, narrows everything. One is in a small channel from here to there. Most of the spiritual practices are practices of concentration. That question has also come up. What is the difference between concentration and awareness? And don't we have to concentrate in order to get to awareness? Concentration means focusing the energies of the mind on one thing. And in different traditions, these are different things. Maybe the tip of the nose, a picture, an idea, a word, a question, a posture, or the breathing. What is common to all concentration practices is the focusing of the energies of the mind on one thing, to the exclusion of everything else. Everything else becomes a distraction, and therefore is to be shunned or controlled. The mind is to be brought back to the one thing, which is struggle, isn't it? Struggle with the distractions, which one has to constantly move away from, and struggle with the image. Of oneself. I should be concentrating, but I can't bring it off. I'm so distracted, so scattered. Awareness is without focus. In awareness, we don't talk about pay attention to this but not to that. This is a distraction and this is the right practice. There is no right practice. Can the idea of right practice come into awareness? Can the struggle to be aware, be seen, come into awareness? Because as long as the struggle to be aware is going on, there's no awareness. There's struggle and image and goal and motive, expectation of reward. Can all of that, this whole thing, come into awareness? Can one wake up to that this is going on, this moment, without a shadow of judgment? It shouldn't be going on. And if this has already happened automatically, can that too come into awareness, that there was judgment? And if the next automatic reaction is, I shouldn't be judging, why am I always judging? Can that also be seen, heard, listened to? So the field is widening, is extending. Because there's nothing that cannot come into awareness. There's nothing that is bad or not to be seen, to be shunned. This is not acceptance. It's neither acceptance nor rejection. It has nothing to do with it. It is the openness of no categorizing of anything. Everything is precisely, exactly what it is. Judging is judging. But if there is really awareness, the wholeness of awareness, then there's a change. Struggle doesn't continue struggling. Dissolves. In listening this moment, is that a struggle? Listening to a paining knee or back at the same time, without calling it that. Is that a struggle? Does the thought come up, well, where do I go from there, from here? That's a thought. Do you see that? With that thought come certain emotions and feelings. I may be getting someplace, or I'm not getting anywhere. At that moment, there's a narrow channel of what's going to happen to me, or may not happen to me. Can one see that? Be aware of it? And listen again widely, openly. Everything having its place, regardless of what it is. as it is, not knowing what it is. We will end here for today.